listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den, episode 99 with Carin Rockind. Soulful, scientific, simple happiness tips you can use now to accelerate your path to love. Hey ladies, welcome into the Dating Den. I'm super pumped up today because, I'm all about happiness and purpose and empowerment and cool chicks. And thusly, I have invited a really amazing woman, Carin Rockind, into the Dating Den. And what I love most about Carin, besides the fact that she told me she was following me when she was single and now she's married, so we should probably find out what her secret sauce was. just as a general tip. She's all about the science behind women's happiness and being happy with yourself first and how your purpose is connected to your happiness. And that's what all I'm about. And so I think you're going to really love our conversation today. So Carin, welcome.
Thank you, Marni. I'm so excited to be here.
I really want to ask you one important question before we even get started. Did you meet your husband online or offline?
Online.
Online. See, ladies? Sorry.
Yes. We met on J-Date. So we're both Jewish. And this is before it was on the phone. This is when it was still on computers. But and we met. I never would have dated him because he's shorter than me. It's just that the way that the situation worked out, I actually was in graduate school and I wanted a drink that night. And all my friends were still working on their thesis and I was done. So that's the good little nerd that I am. And so I went on J-Date and I was like, hey, has anyone asked me out for a drink lately? And this guy had. So I just said, hey, how about now? And if I had looked at his profile, I so would not have gone out with him. But it turned out to be the best decision I've made. And so I went on this date. After the date, I thought I'm never going to see him again. Again, the short thing. And we lived in different cities, or I was moving to a different city. But then he's like, want to ride home? And he pointed to his motorcycle. And I'm like, that is so hot. It's shorter than me. You got game. Let's go.
Okay, first of all, I should just take that snippet because that literally embodies every single principle that I teach.
Totally.
It's out. Your type isn't what your type is. Redefine sexy. It doesn't have to be height. It could be like the motorcycle. It's not about the drink or the dinner. Say yes to opportunities. I love it. I love that. So ladies, just do it. Okay. So that being said,
and real quick, because you told everybody I would give you the one tip.
Yes.
You know what changed for me is I had that perfect checklist. And I know you talk about this too, of my checklist looked like every other woman's checklist, right? Tall, good looking, successful, ambitious, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? That doesn't really get to anything. And so a friend of mine who actually, she was 10 years younger than me. She said, Carin, you need to think about how you want to feel in a relationship. And I really thought about it. And I'm like, I want to be adored. I want to be cherished. And then she really stretched me to say, what does that mean to you? And that way, when I felt that way, I knew I had someone that was worth connecting with and entertaining and giving a shot. So instead of it being about that checklist, it was a different checklist. It's about how I wanted to feel.
I love that because that's a being. Right. That's about being,
Yes.
not just the doing, not just the having, right? It's the being experience with your partner because that will last over the long term. How long have you guys been together?
We've been together, I think 6 or 7 years, and we've been married for 4.
It's amazing. I was on J-Date also. So there you go. I'm all about online dating. Okay. So by the way, you're like, who the hell is Carin anyway? Well, just if you didn't know, she's a leading happiness expert. She's a media personality. She's the creator of Purpose Girl, which I love, a movement that empowers purpose-driven living, which is why bother if you're not on your damn purpose? She has taught thousands of people real-life strategies to reclaim their happiness, to live to their fullest potential of success and well-being, both. She is a survivor. She survived domestic abuse. She's been through divorce, armed robbery. Gosh, she teaches others to be resilient through stress and grow from trauma. And she used to be a marketing executive. which is amazing. And she's just pursued this passion to help women thrive. And she's super cool. And you could also see her if you work at one of these big ass companies because she spoke at Morgan Stanley, Avon, BMW. I'm so glad you spoke at Victoria's Secret. That's good.
You know it. It was good.
It was good. Progressive Insurance. I love your diversity. And you probably have heard of her because she's also like in lots of national media like NBC, CBS, MBS, PBS, NPR, HuffPo, Crane's Business. And she's the freaking happiness guru on Sirius XM radio, Stars Radio. I love
that. Thank you.
Super cool. So let's just talk about, let's just get started with the science of happiness. Like what is the science of it? What the hell is that?
Yeah, most people, they hear that there's a science, they're like, come on, So if you think about why do we even need a science of happiness? If I ask you have kids, Marni, right? What do you want for your kids?
I want them to feel really good in their own skin and have a lot of joy and do what it is their soul sort of calls them to do.
Yes, I love that. And how much is school teaching them that?
0.0. No, what school's teaching them, not the school, the academics, but the socialization.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. So the idea of the science of happiness is, psychology since the beginning of time has really studied illness, right? It has studied depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, really important illnesses that we need to understand and be able to treat. However, there was a realization in the field about 20 years ago, very famous professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He was president of the American Psychological Association, and he said to the field at large, we've done a disservice. Only 30% of people have a diagnosed mental illness. And so we've forgotten about 70% of the population. And just because you're not ill doesn't mean that you're well, right? So you don't have diabetes doesn't mean that you're healthy. You also have to eat well and exercise and be mentally fit. Well, the same is true of your mental health. Just because you're not depressed doesn't mean you're thriving. So he put the call to the field about 20 years ago and said, we need to focus on well-being and what it means to thrive, what it means to flourish. And since then, hundreds of millions of dollars have been poured into research. This is now the most popular class at schools like Yale and Harvard and NYU. And there is now a real science to understand what actually makes people thrive, what makes people happier. And I was, like you mentioned, I was a vice president of marketing in corporate. And I can get into my story a little bit. But when I found this field, I just knew this is like my dream. I have to pursue it. And I gave everything up to get my master's degree in this field. I was 36 years old. And then ever since I've been teaching it. And it's incredible because we have real scientific studies to understand what makes people happier.
Well, this is kind of mind blowing, right? Because I think that so many of us women, right? We get so into the doing and the achieving. Yes. Right? And we're so shut down that we think surviving is living.
Exactly. And it's not. There's a huge difference between survival, right? Surviving and thriving. And you just nailed why we even need a science of happiness, right? It's conventional wisdom. Society tells us that to be happy, you just need to have this other checklist, right? It's get a good job, do well, get a promotion, get that husband, whatever it might be. It's do. And yet what we know at the same time that positive psychology, which is the name of the field, was came about 20 years ago, the economy was doing great. This is the late 90s. It was when there was the dot-com boom. So financially, people were doing well. There was more success than ever before, more achievement. However, just as the economy was on the rise, so was depression. And the average onset of depression was getting younger and younger and now hovers just below 14 years old.
Oh my God. That's just putting it.
It's
knife.
It's insanity. And here's the thing. So women are twice as many women are depressed as men. Women are on more antidepressants than men. Unfortunately, this starts in adolescence, right? So it's our girls and women who are experiencing this. And why? And so much of it gets to what you said, because we've been taught that if we just achieve and achieve and achieve more, we'll be happier. But the research actually shows that the opposite is true. It's that happiness comes first, and then you can have everything that you want.
Oh my God. Well, as a mother of 3 daughters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who like totally, I mean, literally my youngest is 16, and we're constantly really talking about like that perfection is not achievable.
Yes.
Right? Because
yes.
Instagram tells you that it is.
Exactly.
And so imagine like my kids' generation is more conscious than like most of the people who are listening to this podcast, right? So like if you were to look at then that positive psychology is something that is within our grasp, right? You don't just like get a manicure, get a really great vibrator and call it a day and be like, well, I was happy for 4 minutes. Woo, that's self-care. When you look at like what you need to do then to like go within and create that sense of well-being and happiness, like how does someone start when they're like, you don't understand, I have to do shit, like I don't have time to be happy? Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah. So I think, first there's a few different pathways into happiness. So happiness is individual, and yet there is kind of a formula. And the first thing I want to say is that research is really clear that happiness actually is a choice, but it's not found in any one silver bullet, right? I love your vibe. Maybe it's for your vibrator every day, but it's not like found in that. It's found in momentary, day by day, moment by moment choices and actions. And the cool thing is that research actually shows twins who had been separated at birth and then they reconnected later, they do research to understand how much of their happiness is biological and how much comes from something else. And that's how we actually know that it is your daily choices, your momentary choices that make the difference in your happiness. And so I want to go over a few of the different kind of avenues in, and then I want to go deeper into kind of what it is for women, because it's a little different. So what the research shows is that, so the first avenue in is really how much are you allowing your mind to be focused on the positive instead of the negative? Okay. We all have something called negativity bias. And this is because our ancestors needed to survive out in the wilderness. So they were always looking out for threat, right? Like, where are we going to be able to eat for the next day? Do we have enough shelter? And so our brains are, is there a saber-toothed tiger coming at me? So our brains are wired for the negative. And if you pay attention, everyone around us is so negative, the news, and that is why we actually have to be more conscious and be super clear in our minds, that our minds are focused on what is going well. Our minds are focused on what we do want. I was speaking with a woman today. She's never thought about when she's 80, what does she want to say about her life, right? It's like we are in control of our minds, and we have to choose that. We have to understand our brain and choose that positivity and not fake. I don't want anyone faking it. I want you to genuinely shift and start noticing how negative you get. Even simple things like every time you hear yourself say, I can't, ask yourself a question like, how can I? What is possible? Every time you think, well, I don't know how to do that, say, well, who can help me, right? Simple shifts. The second pathway in is engagement. And this is really having work that you love, having hobbies that just like fill you up, juice you up, make you like so excited, so interested, and so interesting, and like really being in the moment and present with your life because you're like in it. The third is relationships. Of course, actually, every research study shows that having healthy, thriving relationships is the number one aspect of people who are happy. And I would say one of the things that we do so well as women, because we're so afraid of everyone being mad at us, is we have a hard time putting a boundary around the negative relationships. And so for women in particular, I think we need to really be on the lookout for where that negativity is coming in and who is draining us, and be able, and we're often related to those people. So we need to be able to put a boundary right around those people. And we don't have to answer the phone all the time. We do get to get off the phone when we need to get off. And do you have soul sisters in your life? I cannot emphasize enough that having the soul sisters, having sisterhood is going to launch you into a whole new level of happiness, of joy, of support, and then you won't be so desperate, when it comes to the man, because you've got your soul sisters, and that's kind of your key. The fourth is meaning and purpose. So we know from the research that people who identify as having purpose, your life, you're making an impact beyond yourself. You're contributing in a way that lights you up. You're doing something that matters to you. That sense of purpose will lead to overall life satisfaction and then achievement. So really, it is a piece of it, but
Right.
it's only one small piece, right? And the thing I find with a lot of women is we're achieving and overachieving, but not necessarily at the things that matter to us, right? So you're working
Exactly.
some job and you're like killing it in some job, but deep down inside, you've been wanting to start doing artwork. You've been wanting to paint. And you're telling yourself it's silly, I shouldn't have to paint, or you're like killing it in your job, but you kind of want to start your own business, but you're too afraid. So the achievement aspect here isn't just achieving to achieve. It's achieving at the things that really feel important to you and like they matter and that you feel like you're a rock star for doing them.
I love this. So if I was going to say like of all of these, it sounds like the number one like foundation is you have to make a choice that you want to start changing your thinking. You have to make a choice that you want to be happy, that you want to create rather than just sort of like survive. Would you say that that's kind of the beginning linchpin piece?
That is it. That is it completely. You know, it's number one, it's making that decision. And then what you want to do is, and like you said, it's in your mind, right? And I don't want anyone out there faking it. So one of the things that is really important is that, you know, I think there's also a lot of pressure on women to just be happy, just smile. You know, it's like we were told as little girls, turn that frown upside down. You don't look as pretty when you're, and I kind of want to say F you to all those people. That's like, we're redefining here, and redefining happiness for women is being your full self. And like really knowing what you're all about and what your dreams are and going after them. And so, you know, women are suffering for a number of reasons, right? We're totally exhausted and burnt out. And this is where we need to like allow ourselves some space. Allow yourselves, you have to take a few minutes every single day, deep breathing, meditation, journaling, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And one thing I want to add to that, because I'm hearing like the naysayers, you know, like you don't understand, like, you know, I have to do it all. And what I think is really powerful around that is number one, bitches, is you think like, how could this apply to me? Not this doesn't apply to me, right? Like that's an empowered choice. And number two is that creating that space, right? Like if you are, then you're just living on that treadmill, right? So like, what do you say to someone like in the moment where is it take a deep breath? Is it like connect in and say what matters most to me? Like when you're in the moment of like, holy crap, I'm doing what I usually do and I want to pivot. I want to do what Carin said. Is there a question you can ask? Is there some sort of breath work? Like, what do you teach your people?
Yeah, we in that moment. So first of all, get to know, because sometimes we'll be in that moment for 20 minutes before we even pause.
Right.
So get to know what your body feels like in that moment. And then, yes, you pause, you do take a breath. And then the words I use are I choose.
I love it.
What am I choosing in this moment? And what do I want to choose? Right. And I hear you. I don't know all of your lives. I don't know, you know, all the lunches that you have to make and that you're the single mom or you have like 10 reports that you have to write. Everybody's being a jerk and a bitch around you. I totally, totally, totally hear you. And what we know is that, listen, you have to decide, is it working for you right now? So is being on that treadmill working for you? And if it is, awesome. If it's not, then we have to start living with intention, which is why I'm so obsessed with purpose, because that purpose is where we start getting intentional about our life and we start really focusing on, I'm going to do what's meaningful to me, not just what's right in front of me at the moment.
I really think this is hugely important. So one of the things, which is interesting, we're not talking about men, we're talking about women, but I will tell you for my husband, who has really, really struggled in accepting that his purpose has nothing to do with his work. Right. And like, I feel like for women, because we're supposed to be super women, you know, and we get into fear of like, you know, there's no one taking care of me, or, you know, even if you're in a relationship, if you've ever been divorced or burned, right. You're like, well, I'm never letting a man, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like we have this, I think it's a weight that says your purpose has to be to your work. And so if it's not and you're a certain age, then you're fucked. right?
Yeah, no,
Or right.
no, yeah, right. I mean, I call them purpose myths, right? Like we've thought that purpose has to be a job title, or that purpose has to be mom, or that purpose has to be like Oprah and it has to be huge, or else you're a total failure. And all of that is a whole bunch of bullshit. I like to ask this question: if there were a gun pointed at your head, what would you regret never having done?
Oh my God, that's so powerful.
The reason I asked that question is that it wasn't hypothetical for me. So when I go back and I was a corporate marketing executive making my, healthy 6-figure plus salary, I had a boat, I had my own condo, like the whole bit, right? I was successful. I was achieving, but I wasn't achieving in the way that was really meaningful to me. I had this dream of empowering women and I was too afraid to go and do it. And so one day I actually went on a bad blind date and I was walking home from that blind date and I was living in Cleveland, Ohio, and I go to put my key in the condo door and I suddenly felt hot breath on my neck. And I turn around and I come nose to nose, Marni, nose to nose with this really young man. And he had these huge, like saucer, they were black eyes and they were huge. And I'm like, are you going inside? I asked him, are you going inside? Maybe he's meeting a friend or an aunt or someone who lived in the building. And then he looks into my eyes for an extra second. And then he looks down at my belly and he pulls a gun.
Holy
and
shit.
Exactly. And I fall to the floor and I'm screaming, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. My hands are over my head. I'm screaming. I can hear myself. I look up and now the gun is pointed at my left temple. And I'm like, all right, this is it. This is my last moment on earth. And I say to God, okay, thank my parents. It's been a good life. And all of a sudden, Marni, some other voice speaks up. And she was like, it was like a woman's voice and very calm. And she said, oh no, you were put on this earth for purpose and women need you.
Whoa.
And so I'm like, all right. I said, okay, God, if you let me live, I promise I will pursue that purpose. And just at that moment, the man took my purse and he ran. And so I survived that day. Listen, it all sounds like a whole bunch of bullshit. It sounds like a Hallmark card. It sounds like a bumper sticker, an Instagram, until you're really at that moment. And I don't want any woman who's listening to this to be at that moment. I want you to get honest about yourself and your life. And if that were you and the gun was pointed at your head, how would you feel about the way you've lived so far? And if there is any part of your life where it's life controlling you instead of you controlling your own life, where it is you feeling victim instead of you being the creator, where there is a dream sitting in your heart that is going to be hard and is challenging and you have no time for and would probably make you so happy, then I want you to imagine that gun is to your head, because that is going to make the difference in you starting to take even small steps toward doing it, because that's what happened to me. And that's what made me say, all right, I'm going to go for it, even though it's scary. And that's when I went back to graduate school and gave everything up to start life over again.
That's so amazing. And I think that because I talk to people all the time, obviously, and we have that conversation and I'm like, so what would you most regret? You're 85 and you never really did anything to fix it. And they're like, well, I would never let that happen. And some do make that change, right? They have that moment with themselves and some don't because they're in fear. And for me, I talk to someone who's 35 and I'm like, girlfriend, if you don't do that moment, if you don't take it seriously, you call me in 20 years.
Exactly. And that's how we end up. I would have thought, well, that would never be me, except then I ended up 36, right? I would have said I got divorced at 26 from my first marriage. And I never would have said I'd be 36 and not knowing who I was and pursuing a purpose. But it was 10 years later because it was easy, right? It was easy to just be on that achievement doing track and not really listening to my heart. And then I can go back and I can wonder, or I did wonder at the time, well, how come none of these relationships are working out? I was in a series of 1-year monogamous relationships during those 10 years from 26 to 36. Well, they weren't working out because I wasn't knowing and owning who I was. And really saying, you know what, my dreams are sacred. I am sacred and I'm going to do me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's just it. It's like first of all, again, your results are a reflection of that place of not knowing, right? So you're like, oh, it wasn't an accident. A year is solid. It's a solid go.
Yeah, but I made it kind of a sport. You know what I mean?
Well,
and I think exactly
right, because you're you're in it, but it's like doing what you said, you're you liked your job. It's not like your job was awful. You had enough. Like a year is like you can check the box and say I'm giving it a solid try.
Right.
But like that one common denominator was you not really being in your full, authentic, like fully expressed self. And then you do that, and then ding, click, J-date, changing the world, changing women's lives. Hello. Okay, I have a question.
Exactly. Yes.
So we have two choices in such a short time. Do you think we should talk about, I love multiple choice. Do you think we should talk about like how this impacts women in relationships, or do you want to just kind of dive into like how can someone really start to figure out what their purpose is, or what has meaning for them?
Well, let's start with the latter because of the content of your podcast, and then we'll get into the former. I think we can do that even just a couple minutes. So the way I see it is how your happiness and your purpose. And by the way, to me, they're the same. And I want to go back 1 second. You don't have to live your purpose as a job, but you do have to. If you've been wanting to, like one of my clients was very, very, very successful ad exec in New York City, and she owned a couple apartments, and she was not giving up her job, but she was super passionate and wanted to uplift girls. So she started a nonprofit on the side, and she didn't have tons of time. So she got a few friends and board members, and they helped her out. But every year she would send one of these girls abroad. And that was like her way of giving back, and it gave her life meaning. So there are lots of ways. It doesn't have to be your primary job, right? What I know is that confidence is super sexy. Purpose is super sexy. And a woman who is out there and doing something that like really matters to her, you're then going to feel so good about yourself. It's not, you don't anymore have to be so dependent. And I'm not talking about with money, even though that might, I don't think anyone listening here that's what they're about.
Right.
But rather the emotional side, because you're getting filled up on living. And when you're full on living, you just show up in the world in a totally different way. Like an empowered woman is a goddess, and a goddess shows up where she doesn't need anyone's attention. She makes her own fun, right? And then that is super attractive. So I think to me, I see it all as related.
Well, yeah. And what I love about that is a couple of things. One is you're filled up by life. And that does, and I want you to kind of do like a Carin rant. That does not mean filled up by busyness.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes. No, it's like a feeling of being full of like, no, not of doing, but of being, because you're of a pleasure and enjoyment, right? I often think the word depressed, and even if you're not clinically depressed, so many women are depressed. I think of it as like you're pushing down, right? Some aspect of you're pushing down your joy, you're pushing down your own pleasure, you're pushing down what's meaningful to you, as opposed to fulfillment. You're like lit up, right? That's what I mean by full. You're lit up. And anyone who's ever had the experience of doing something where you feel alive and on top of the world, not because someone gave you an award, not because you were out with an awesome date, not because you were at your skinniest, but because you were doing something that felt powerful for you and you were really proud of yourself. Like you just felt like a goddess. You felt good about who you are. That's fulfillment.
I love that. Now, let me ask you one last question, because I think when someone's listening to this, and I know I just had this like strong intuitive hit of like people listening, and there's a little dream inside, and Carin's saying this and it's wanting to come out, and they're like, no, that's just go back. Stay down there. Stay down there. That's scary.
Depressed.
Yeah, depressed. Like, I don't want to like confront the pain of or the reality of like, so is there a gentle way to ease into like hearing the whisper of your soul?
Yeah. Such a good question. And that will kind of lead into the other part of kind of what's your first step and how do you like uncover your purpose? So the first is to spend some time getting quiet and to play. And I like to make like a few like juicy lists. Like one of the lists that I made, I like to have clients make is like, what do you regret? Is there anything in your life, like you've heard the whisper and you kind of tell yourself, you know what, I never have to follow these. Let me just play with them and get them down, right? Also, what do you get jealous of other women over? Because that will tell you some of your desires and what you might like, to do. And then in terms of like, you can calm yourself down the whole way. Like, I'm just going to do one little step here. It doesn't mean I ever have to do anything about it. Like you can just keep saying that to yourself. And that will help you take like one little step. but I want you to start playing with it. I think one of the reasons we get so scared is we take it like, oh my God, and then we think 10 steps ahead as if like from all the negative, and instead start playing with it. And I love a process one of my mentors calls moodling. And that's when you just kind of what I call fattening up the dream. So let's say it is to start your own business. So you calm yourself, you make yourself some nice tea or a glass of wine or some hot cocoa. And you say, oh, I'm just going to play with like, what would I want the walls of that business to be? What color would I want it to be? Like, what kind of people would I want to work with? What would the products be? And you let yourself play. We all have little girls inside of us who loved playing imagination. And we've just told her to kind of go away. So I want you to play and play. The other thing you can do that will kind of ease your nerves is to start looking for people who are doing something similar and contact them. Ask them, hey, I'm just curious. Like, how did you get started? I'm curious what it's like. And you want to find mentors who have done it, right? Because that's going to help to ease some of your nerves and to know that you're going to be okay. And I also love surrounding myself. I said sisterhood is where it's at.
Yeah.
I love surrounding myself with sisterhood.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, because you want to be with people who are lifting you up, especially, well, in all areas of your life. But like when I was single, did you ever do that thing when you're in like the not good space and you walk in a place with your friends, you're like, there's no one good here. Let's go.
Yes.
And everyone's like, yeah, let's go. Let's just go to In-N-Out. Fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. And so you got to have those girlfriends around you. And the girlfriends that you need around you are the ones who think you are the badassest, most amazing, most gorgeous, most fabulous, most incredible, most capable woman alive. So that they're constantly telling you that, because you're going to have a lot. If you already have a naysayer in your own mind.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to have naysayers all around you. And so don't share your dream with just anybody. Okay. I made that mistake a long time ago. Don't share your dream with just anybody. Only the people who are going to lift you up and think that you are totally capable are worthy of those dreams. And then let them really lift you up. Let them in on it. But again, it could be one person or nobody to start, but you really only want to let the people in. It's like your little baby. And you have to think of it that like we carry a baby in our bellies for 40 weeks, right? For 9 months, not almost 10. And so no one's allowed to touch that baby until it's fully developed. And the same is true of a dream. So like let yourself dream. Only let the people who are so safe to you kind of hear about it. And listen, if you're out there and you're like, I just know that what I'm doing is not for me and not making me totally happy, and I don't know what I want, you want to start. And the process is that you start to get clear on your own joy via exercises, really looking back. When have you felt alive and lit up? Finding the themes, knowing your own strengths, looking at even your child. I do an exercise with clients. I have a 4-month empowered program for women. And I do exercises around what can we learn from our childhood dreams about what it is that you might want to actually like what your true purpose is. So we do a lot of like digging into who you are, and then really looking at what are those fears that are getting in your way. And we turn them upside down. We want to turn shame and guilt and fear into fuel for moving forward. And then to have that support, either of a mentor, of a coach, of a group of women who are helping you to take steps forward, baby steps. I mean, I have a client who discovered that she, like in doing the Empowered program with me, she like remembered that she had always wanted to paint. But when she was a kid, she heard those do you remember those starving artist commercials?
Yes.
Like, and as a kid, she was very conscious, I don't want to starve. And so she never pursued her painting. And so it was like step number 1 was just to get some brushes. And she didn't have to leave her job. She didn't have to do it. Step number 2 was just get a canvas, right? But with the support of others and playing, she was able, now she has a studio in her home and she hasn't left her job, but she has sold a couple of paintings to other people. And so she feels alive. And when she feels alive, now she's sexy.
I love that. Girl, I never feel more sexy when I'm sitting in the knitting shop with my with a bunch of ladies like being creative. I'm never going to sell any of my knitting, right? But it really does give me that sense of fill me up, and it has nothing, but it's that creative part of me, right? It's that community, It's that connection, and it has nothing to do at all with what I do. So What I hear you saying is there's so many ways you can explore what gives you meaning and what gives you purpose, which is the route, which do you say? to happiness.
I say route. Which do I say? I don't know, but they both work. Listen, I think every woman, we are not one thing. Okay. We're not just one job, and we're not just being a mom, and we're not just being a wife. We are multifaceted, and every woman is, every woman has like that unconditional love in her, and every woman is like a fierce warrior. She will fight for what matters. And every woman is a sensual goddess, and every woman is like a mermaid. Inside of her is like that childhood joy. And our opportunity is like every woman is like primal and sexual. And our like opportunity to be our happiest self is to really like discover and allow every single aspect of us. And then we're going to feel lit up, fulfilled, and on purpose.
I love that. So give homage and attention to the whisper is what I hear you saying, and make that choice. What's your like final call to action of inspiration? Because I feel like you are lit up, girl.
Thank you. I love it. So the most important thing you can do is ask yourself, what am I choosing today? And what do I want to choose? See how you are if you're being a victim in any area, and instead say, fuck that. I'm the creator of my own life. And you start exploring and playing and creating. And whether or not it ever becomes paid doesn't matter. You being in creation mode, that's what women are for. We're inspiring and creative, and you are going to feel lit up and alive.
I love that. # fuck that.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, ma'am.
Carin, you're amazing. Ladies, go in the show notes. You're going to find a lot more information. You can find out about the Empowered program. You can find out about what Carin is up to. She's also got a really cool Women's Global Happiness Day. Do you want to just talk about that? Because this is just really about like you're taking this global, and I'm all about changing lives all over the world. So just give me a 2 minutes on that, just because I love what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the 1 minute is that I actually had a second miscarriage a year ago and was actually severely depressed. I didn't want to be alive, and I needed to use all my own tools. And so I just kept I leaned into sisterhood, everything, and I just prayed, like, show me what else I'm here to birth. And I had this vision of all these women around the world who felt like I did, or who weren't even clinically depressed, just didn't have the tools. And then I had a vision of women gathering in small circles all over the world. And I'm thrilled to say that exactly 1 year after the miscarriage, I launched Women's Global Happiness Day. It's not for profit. We had 98 events in 19 countries on 6 continents. Women gathered in a group, 20 women gathered in Lagos, Nigeria. 15 women gathered outside of Jerusalem, Arab women and Jewish women together to talk about what it means to be a woman. Women gathered in Singapore, in Portland, Oregon, in Philadelphia, Brooklyn, New York, you name it. Women gathered all over on one day to say that we're going to do something together to empower each other to be happier. And so I really, it's like, it just lit me up. That was year 1. I am gearing up for year 2. We're going to be doing this every year. And you can find out all of that on my website at Purpose Girl. And the other thing I'm so passionate about this that I've just launched is something called the Happy Woman Shop. And I created, there's a few different items for women to be their happiest self, like mantra cards that I wrote specifically based on the things that hold women back, like perfectionism and beating themselves up. And you can find those on the happywomanshop.com. But I made a necklace that says, I choose. And it's sexy and it's beautiful. And it's that constant reminder. You just have to touch it and to remember you are at choice every moment of the day and every day of your life. So just a couple of fun things for women out there who want to take control of their lives.
I love it. I have one of these little bracelets that said choice all year, and I'm figuring out what my word's going to be for next year. But I might just transfer from bracelet to necklace and be part of the movement. Purpose Girl. Yeah.
You got it, Marni. I love it. Thank you.
I love it. So ladies, like, check out the shop. Check out Women's Global Happiness Day. Like, let's have dating with dignity, like part of that mission. I'm all about it. And in the meantime, when you do go out, date with some damn dignity. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here, Carin.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP. That's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com. and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to dwdvip.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.